Welcome to another video tutorial on dates and time in Excel. In our last video tutorial on dates and time in Excel, we looked at simple math and Excel workbook function on dates. Today, we'll be looking at more Excel workbook functions. Specifically, we'll be looking at the Datevalue function and the days function in Excel. Let's go. Here, looking at the workbook that I have opened here, you can see that we have the Datevalue function, Excel workbook function that returns the serial number of the date. If you can remember, in our previous video tutorial on date and time in Excel, I explained that Excel recognizes date as a continuous calendar from 1900, that is if you are using Windows, and if you are using Mac, it's from 1904. So the way Excel does is that it's a continuous calendar from 1900. It counts the number of days that you have from 1900. So it now represents the date as serial. So for instance, if you have 2115 as a date, if Excel is showing you that serial as a date, what it means is that what you have 2115 days from 1900 to now, to that date. That's what it means. So don't worry, don't let me bore you out. Let's see how the Excel Datevalue function works. So right here, so you can convert a date that is stored as text to a serial number that Excel recognizes as a date. So yes, for the date function, for the Datevalue function to work, you need your date to be stored as a text. So how do we do that? How do you convert your date to text? So for the Datevalue function to work, here it is gone. Let's see. So as you can see from the table here, you can see the Datevalue function to store your data as text. For instance, for this example that we have in the first row here, under this equation column, Datevalue function 1503 in 2009, you will get a pound value error. Why are you getting the pound value error? It's because the date that we have here is not stored as a text format. So how do you convert this date to text format? So it's very easy. All you need to do is to put your date in quotation mark. Once your date is in quotation mark, Excel automatically recognizes that date. That's the date is automatically converted to a text format, and Excel will be able to recognize it, and Datevalue function will be able to work and provide you a resulting date serial that Excel recognizes. So as you can see from the second row here, we have Datevalue to say 15/10/1905, and the date is in quotation mark. You can see the results that we get to be the date serial. You can see other examples. You can also use the Datevalue function to a cell that has a date. But one thing that you need to know is that the date must also be stored as a text, just like this. That the date must be in quotation. The date must be in quotation mark for it to work, or else you get a pound value error. So let's try all of this and see. Let's try it out here. So I'm going to be calling my Datevalue function. So let's use today's date, for instance. Today is 15/05/2024. You see, I'm getting a pound value error. Take a guess. Why do you think I'm getting a pound value error? If you check from this formula bar, Excel formula bar here, you can see that my date is not stored as a text. There's no quotation mark in my date. So now let's edit this now and add quotation mark to the date, and you would see what happens once we add quotation mark to the date. So the same date, and I press enter. You see, Excel gives us the serial 45,427. So this means, if you can remember in our previous tutorial video, I explained that this serial means that we have 45,427 days from 1900 because I'm using a Windows operating system. If I'm using a Mac operating system, it means the date will be calculated from 1904. That's if you're using the Mac OS. So let's move on to another Excel workbook function. Don't worry, I'm going to take you from the novice level to a pro level in using Excel. So yeah, so here is another Excel workbook function, the day workbook function. The day workbook function helps to return the numeric value of the day in the syntax day. So the way this works, the day Excel workbook function works with a day that is stored in text or the date serial. As you can see in the table that I have here in this equation column, if there are some things that you need to understand about this day function, is that if you want to use the day function, your date should be in either text format or your date should be the date serial. If you want to use the date function and your date is not in serial, it's not in serial, or your date is not converted to text, just like we learned in the previous workbook function, the date value. If you're using the date like what we have in the first rule here, day, and you call out the day syntax, and you use 15, you're using the day 15 month of May 2009. The result that you will get will be 0. Why are you getting 0? Because Excel is seeing, because your date is not in serial, and Excel sees what you type there as numbers that you are trying to divide those numbers. You know, the / in Excel is also used for division. It's also used for division in Excel. So Excel will automatically see what you have written there as 15 divided by 3 divided by 2009, which will automatically sum it to 0. So that's where you're going to be getting your result at 0, which is wrong. It's not, I'm sure that's not what you want to get. So to properly use the date Excel workbook function, what you need to do is to ensure that your date is in quotation marks for it to be converted to text, or you actually use a date serial. So let's see this as you can see in this second rule here, day and date is properly in quotation mark to convert it to text. The result that you're going to get is going to be 15, which is the day in the date that we have there. If your date, this day function, I usually use it for when my date is in serial to get the day in that serial. So this is good for if you have a data and the data that you have is in date serial and you're confused, how do I get day from that day serial? It's easy. All you need to do is to just use the date function, and Excel will automatically give you the day in that serial. As you can see from this rule 3 here, from this date serial here, Excel is once you use the day function, it's giving you the results, the day in that date, which is day 20. So that this serial is equivalent to 20/03/2011. Don't worry, let's practice this and let's see it out. So I'm going to be using the day function. If you can remember, earlier we used this serial, this 45,427. So I'm going to be using that serial number, that serial date, 45,427. So press enter. As you can see, I'm getting 15. So that is day 15. If you can remember from the example we used earlier, we used 15/05/2004, which is today's date. So Excel is giving me the day as well too in that day, which is 15. So let's use another date. Let's try it out again. So I'm using the day function again. let's use 21. See that an error. I need to ensure that my date should be in quotation mark for it to be converted to text. 21 5 okay, 21 6 1905. Then you press enter. You see the day in that date is 21. So Excel will help you bring out the day. So this is this day function is good for you to extract the day from the serial dates. So there's another workbook function that I want to show us today before we move on. There's another Excel workbook function that I would like to show us before we close for today. Is the DAYS360. This DAYS360 Excel workbook function is good for you to track the number of days that you have between two different dates. So when you use this DAYS360, it helps you return the number of days between the two dates based on the 360-day year. 360-day year. What does this 360-day year mean? This 360-day year means that Excel will automatically ensure that all the days in the month end at 30th. That is, all the days in a month is equal to 30. All the months that we have, we have some months that are 31. So when you use the DAYS360, Excel will automatically route all the days in the year to be 30 days in a month, so which gives us 360 days in a year instead of 365 days that we have in a year, and 366 days for a leap year. So this DAYS360 is used for tracking number of days that you have between 2 days. It's actually good for you if you want to track how long it takes for you to maybe to track production days, or to track maybe delivery dates between when you place an order and when the order was actually delivered. If you want to track, or you want to measure your efficiency in terms of days, or in terms of dates that you have. So this Excel workbook function is actually good for that. So let's see how this Excel workbook function works. So you need to understand the way this syntax, this DAYS360 syntax works. Is that it has 3 arguments, but you can use 2. If you use 2, it will give you the result. But this has to be based on what you actually, depending on what you want. So the 3 arguments that are in this syntax is that you need the start date. That's the first argument. Then the second argument is the end date. And the third argument that is required is the method. So now this method, what does this method mean? If you do not, like I said earlier, that you can either use the 2 arguments and Excel will still produce the result for you. If you use the 2 arguments, the start date and the end date, Excel will produce the result for you without including the method. So the method is optional. So when do you know when to use the method? So if you do not use the method, automatically Excel will produce a result for you in US method for you. But if you want a specific method, maybe you want the European method, then Excel will use the European method for you. That is when you specify the method that you want. So if you put false, or you omit it without putting anything, Excel will give you your result in US method. But if you use true, Excel will use the European method. So what do you need to do? What's the difference between the US method and the European method? It's very simple. So if you start a date, if your start date is the last date of the month, for instance, which is 30th. So both methods set that start date to 30th of the month. But the end date of the last date of the month or the US method will change the date to the 1st of the next month. The European method will change the date to 30th. What does this mean? It means that if based on what you are trying to calculate, if the dates if you're using the US method, if your start date is on the 30th, Excel will automatically change it to the first of the next month. That is, if it is the 30th of, for instance, May, Excel will automatically change it to 1st of June. But if you are using the European method, Excel will leave, if your start date is still 30th, Excel will leave it as 30th that you have placed there. That if you want the European method you put true at the end of your argument. In your syntax, you put true. But if you want the US method, you put false, or you do not even put anything at all. Excel will automatically use the US method. I know all of this is sounding confusing to you. Don't worry. Let's test it out and see how all of these work out. So as you can see in the table that I have below here, we have 2 dates using the DAYS360, using sales day 27/02/2009, that's the start date, and the end date being 05/03/2009. So here, Excel will automatically calculate the number of dates between using the DAYS360 syntax. Excel will calculate it and give you the result, the number of days between the 2 dates. So now let's try this out ourselves and see. Then we'll now also try out to see when we want to use the US method or the European method and see what happens. So for instance, let's put a date here. So let's say we started a project 12/04 last month, 2024. That's the start date, and we ended the project 01/05/2024. That's 1st of this month. So now we want to use the DAYS360 function. So now you see Excel is asking me it's already showing me the syntax that is needed for this workbook function: start date, end date, and the method. So the start date, now I'm going to be picking my start date. So once I put comma, you see Excel is highlighting the end date, telling me that, okay, the next argument that I need for this syntax is the end date. So now I'm going to be selecting my end date. Then if I can stop here, I can stop my argument here and close my bracket and hit enter. I see Excel will give me the results, and this is correct. This is the number of days that we have between the 2 dates, 19 days. 19 days. So this is if I stop here. So like I said earlier, that you can use 2 arguments for this function and Excel will still produce the result for you. And at the same time, you can also still go a step further to provide the method that you want, either if you want the US method or you want the European method. And I've explained the difference between the 2 methods. So now let's see another day. Let's see what happens if we want to specify the method that we want Excel to use. So I'm going to be using 15th of March 2024, and say we ended it 3rd of April 2024 as well. So now I'm using the DAYS360 function. Then I'm picking my start dates, comma, then the end dates, comma. You see, now Excel is asking me, what do I want? Do I want the US method? See, false for the US method or true for the European method. You can see down here. You see Excel is already showing me. So let's start with the US method, which is what Excel have used in the previous example that we tried out. So I'm going to press enter here. You see, 18 days. We have 18 days here. So I'm going to try something else. I'm going to copy this same date because I want to use the same date, and I want us to see what happens if we are using the European method. So DAYS360. Sorry, DAYS360. Then I pick my start dates, my end dates. Now I'm specifying the method to be true, which is the European method, and press enter. See, Excel is still giving me the same dates, the same result, which is 18, because the days that the 2 days that we're using, the days there are not 30th. You know, the only difference between the US method and the European method is when the start date has to do with the 30th. So I'm going to be trying the 30th and see what happens. Let's see what happens. So let's assume my start date here is 30th of March 2024, and my end date here is going to be, say, 17 of April 2024. So now I'm using my function again, DAYS360, selecting my start dates, selecting my end dates. Now let's start with the US method first. For the US method, now I press enter. You see, Excel is telling me, okay, the date is 17. This is for the US method. I'm going to copy the same dates. Let's try it for, DAYS360. Let's try it for the European method and see the difference. Start dates, the end dates. I'm selecting the European method, which is true. Now enter. You see, Excel is still giving me 17 days. But the difference between the two here is that for this, Excel will automatically convert this 30th to the 1st of June. So now Excel is calculating from the 1st of June to the 17th of June. So that's the difference here between these two, whether it is true or I'm using whether I'm using the US method or the European method. There's some dates that you are calculating that it might warrant that, okay, you might get a different, maybe an additional extra 1 day if you are using the US method, unlike when you are using the European method. So if you get that, just understand that it has to be because you are using the US method. But most of the time, most people tend to, depending on the region that you find yourself, or depending on what is specified in the data that you're using, will determine what you use for the DAYS360 function. But here you go with the DAYS360 function. Now you understand how to use the DAYS360 function. I would like to stop here for today on our tutorial on date and time in Excel. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel, and if you want specific training on date function, please drop a comment and reach out to us, and we'll definitely do a video on that, a training video on that. Thank you very much for your time. Remember, stay tuned and watch out for more videos on date and time in Excel. Bye for now.